Hello, Sabrina.
Hi, Tina.
Sabrina, in the exhibition, we present your installation, Floralia. We dive into a dark space in which we encounter display vitrines that are illuminated and that contain different plants and flowers. What is the topic of Floralia and why is it important for you?
hmm Yes, Floralia is actually a project that have been inspired by many ideas, theories, and science fiction. For example, I was really much into reading Sting with the Trouble at the time by Donna Haraway. I got really inspired by specific quotes that informed the images that I created. She has a beautiful way with words that evoke images, and for me, it was very inspiring to create these images based on these quotes. But it's also inspired by science fiction, the science fiction of Greg Egan, for example, that speculate that one day we could digitize our mind and live into this virtual world. And I was very much fascinated by this idea of archives, of these archive of the world that we have known in the physical reality that could only be now experienced through 3D models and virtual archives. So it's kind of a mix of both ideas, both approaches. It was also a way for me to kind of approach the subject of Anthropocene in a more poetic way, trying to find my own way to enter this very difficult subject. And so Floralia is all of these things.
Yeah,
There's a lot of important topic for me in this project.
great. And why did you choose flowers? Is it also a certain archive you're referring to?
Actually, I'm for the plants that are in the videos, these were inspired by my experience during the pandemic where I had the chance to be in the country in France. And I was also exploring different techniques such as scan 3D, grammetry. And so I chose kind of plants that are everywhere in our surroundings that maybe we take for granted, like roses or hydrangea or simple trees and ferns, and trying to imagine that maybe in the future we would not have access to these plants anymore. Maybe they would have disappeared. And there's something very anguishing about this idea. But the fact that I use these beautiful plants is also a way to create this tension between a distressing reality of losing these plants, but also being in this beautiful environment that is all digital. And I do like this ambiguity.
Yes, I like very much that you're addressing these topics of the Anthropocene with such a beautiful topic, which is not frightening. I love that. So, would you say you also try to create your own archive, or is it about
Mhm.
speculating about digital versions of the plants?
Yeah, I think it's a speculative archive, maybe. Like the idea of archive, speak of the past, of something that have maybe disappeared and that we keep, and in this kind of idealized bubble, like this was this plant, and we kind of celebrate that past. And it's the fact that these plants are actually still existing today, and we are projecting ourselves in this speculative future. To me, was a way to a bit mixing the past, present, and the future in this very simple concept.
Yeah, you're not doing a one-to-one reproduction of the plants, but you use other visual strategies, more abstract visual strategies.
Mhm.
Can you talk more about the way you create your visuals?
Yes, so these are, as I mentioned, the 3D scans. It's a way to bring in elements from reality, the physical reality that is very much realistic, and bring it into this virtual world, digital world, where I can completely transform the surroundings and even the matter itself. So, for example, use the idea of making those plants explode because it's a nice way to create some kind of aleatory movement and create some surprise in the process and in this not unexpected composition. To me, this also symbolizes this idea that we can enter inside of the intimacy of the plant and these sounds that are reminiscent of the surroundings of the plant at the time. So this was one way to really being immersed in the reality of that plant. So that's one strategy that it was used. I also used some video synthesizers. So that's a tool that come from early video art, working with electricity and very much ingrained in my practice. And for me, it's a way to work with this very abstract matter, which is electricity. And in the context of this project, it's reminiscent of a holographic, a bit like a vision of the past of what holograms would have been, and just this electricity that surrounds us also and link us together, this very abstract matter that.
That's really beautiful. I love very much the way of installing Floralia and how the plants explode and they come out of the vitrines. It's things you could not display like this in physical life. It's very unique to the digital conditions.
Mhm.
Did you ever think of bringing Floralia in a physical show and physical matter, or sometimes a hybrid of both worlds to present Floralia?
Yes, Floralia is a very spectacular kind of work I've shown in a very different context, mostly as video installation. There's also a wallpaper that is displayed behind me, which is all of the plants together where I've put them in a different composition. So mainly it's been shown as video installation, but the work also exists as a virtual reality project, which was very important for me because it really addresses this question of us losing our body and being just a digitized consciousness. So it really made sense for me to bring this into virtual reality projects. So yes, it can have many manifestations, many way of showing the work.
Yeah, exactly. And would you consider this possibility of showing artworks in general in versions in different contexts, pointing out different ideas, also communicating differently to the viewer? Would you
Mhm.
say this is a special condition of the digital, and would you say this is very important for you?
To show my work in different contexts and how it affects the viewer
And
point of.
and that you can always have different versions of one work, and depending of the context you show it.
Totally. I think of my work as very adaptable and flexible and malleable in some ways, just like the digital medium is, pixels and electricity, you can expand them in so much different forms and so much potential in there. So to me, it's totally relevant and even important to show my work in different contexts. It's part of the concept from the beginning.
Yes, I see. And how did you come up with the title of Floralia?
Mm-hmm. Floralia is a festival in ancient Rome for nature and spring and for the goddess Flora. And I think it was a very decadent festival, like a huge party. And I did like the idea, of celebrating nature and flora, but in a very different context, in this idea that this nature has disappeared and only exists in this digital world. So it's all this dialogue or dichotomy that I'm looking for, which is a mix between something very festive or utopian meeting this distressing dystopia in a way, and you're not sure where you stand in between.
Yeah, that's true. You're just immersed and you can fully enjoy the work and reflect on it. What are your next projects and your upcoming shows? Do you have other shows to install Floralia also?
Yeah, well, at the moment, I have a big solo show here in Montreal at Arsenal Contemporary Art, and where I show Floralia on the biggest wall I've never shown before. Wallpaper is huge. And I also show some work in Germany until August 6th. It's in Essen at the Zollverein UNESCO World Heritage.
Yes.
And it's part of the New Now Festival, who commissioned my latest work called Inflorescence. So you can see that until the end of the summer. And in the next year, I have a solo show coming up in Winnipeg in Canada. And I will be part of different festivals, group shows, one in Germany as well at the Max Ernst Museum, which
Oh,
will
wow.
be
Yeah.
interesting because they're making this parallel between surrealism and digital art.
Sounds awesome, Sabrina. Thank you for
Thank
being
you.
part of the show with Floralia.